Okay, hey everybody. It is Tuesday night, and I just got out of a preview. Sorry, I had my hood up. I was all messed up. I look like I'm in perfect storm or something over here. I don't know what happened to the weather today. I got my windshield wipers on. I don't know what happened to the weather today. I'm going to try to turn the heat off, or at least turn it down a bit so it's not blowing right at the phone. I'm not sure. I'm going to turn it all the way off. I'm not sure what happened to the weather here today, but I think it has to do with what's been going on up in the Northeast. I've got some water here. I actually am getting over a bit of a cold or a flu or something. I'm all but healed, but it's lingering a bit in terms of this cough. Anyway, so I'm sitting in the theater parking lot, as I do. I just got done seeing Pacific Rim 2 preview screening. Pacific Rim will open this weekend. Pacific Rim 2 will open this weekend. The original Pacific Rim was directed by Guillermo del Toro, and I think my misgivings about this movie were wondering if it would just devolve into something like something like a Transformers film. You got big monsters, you got big robots. Why would you need anything else? We'll just do that, and that'll be the film, and we'll make $1 billion. And why bother with something? An interesting movie. Why bother with an interesting movie if you have monsters and giant mecha robots piloted by soldiers? I mean, it's tempting. It's tempting, I'm sure, to just leave it at that. But what ends up happening in this film is you don't have the tone of a Guillermo del Toro film. To me, del Toro's movie has a bit more of a sort of a reverence for the Kaiju classics, films like the Godzilla films and things like this, giant monster destroying city films. And there's, just because of the story in the first movie, there's a bit more of a science fiction feeling to it, because they have to sort of set up this whole origin tale. And, for people who haven't seen the movie, basically, what you need to know going into Pacific Rim 2 is that in the first film, there is a race of, kind of like interdimensional aliens, basically, that send these monsters into our world through this sort of dimensional doorways in the bottom of the ocean, these giant monsters to destroy our world. They catch humanity by surprise, and we end up inventing these giant like mecha suits, right? So this is like another sort of Japanese genre, this idea of like the giant steel robot guy with the human pilot. Now, these mecha suits actually require two pilots who basically log in neurologically and link together in a neural handshake. There's a neural handshake that takes place, whereby essentially their minds become one, and then they're able to sort of mime the movements and the controls and stuff they need to do. And then on the exterior, the giant robot is fighting the monsters. Basically, that's what you need to know about the first movie. Evil interdimensional aliens send giant monsters into our world through a dimensional gateway. We fight back with huge suits of armor piloted by pilots. And of course, all is well that ends well until this film. Now, in this movie, a lot of those similar things are here. Giant monsters are here. Giant mecha suits with two pilots are here. However, there's an introduction of a new element, which is there is a company that is trying to create a fleet of drone mecha suits. These suits are called Jaegers, by the way, like a Jägermeister. So I'll start calling them Jaegers. So these Jaeger suits, the idea is that if they have these automated Jaeger suits, obviously it's safer for the pilots, because the pilots are just sitting at a desk, just like the actual drone pilots in our real world are sitting at a desk while they're blowing the fuck out of people on the other side of the world. So there's that aspect of it. The other aspect of it is they can have these drones placed all over the world. So no matter what happens where, if one of these kaiju monsters shows up again, we'll be ready, because there'll be drones deployed everywhere and ready at a moment's notice to prevent another horrific attack. So basically, that's what you need to know. I mean, those are the elements that are in play in this film. And as always, I'm going to try not to give you a whole lot of spoilers. In this movie, the star is John Boyega. John Boyega, who plays the son of, I think his name is like Commander Pentecost in the first movie. But Idris Elba's character, I think that's the actor who plays him. In the first movie, one of the pilots, sacrifices himself at the end of the movie. Spoiler from the first movie. Sacrifices himself to save the planet. And John plays his son, and the idea is that he joined the forces, fighting against the mechas. Because he was following in his father's footsteps. He wanted to be closer to his father. I'm totally distracted. There's all this commotion going on in the parking lot around me right now. None of these people seem to come dressed for the weather tonight. I don't know why. It was cold as fuck when I got here. So I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to face a nor'easter. Me and George Clooney are fucking ready to go. So he, the idea is that he teamed up with his dad, when the first battle happened. And, that he was becoming a pilot in his own right and all this stuff. But then, because of some twists of fate and stuff, he ended up, washing out of the program. And he ended up, at the beginning of this movie, he's sort of a ne'er-do-well, sort of like half criminal, basically. Who just is sort of living to just party and make money and, just sort of live in the sort of, the netherworld that's left over after these monsters have attacked the Earth. A lot of the cities have rebuilt, but there's a whole lot of areas around the world where essentially, it's sort of kind of like the Wild West now, because there's, miles and miles and miles of just total destruction. There's no, government or law to be found in these areas. And so you can kind of do what you want, and make up your own rules. It's kind of tempting, actually. I see why he would want to do that. So at the beginning of the movie, he's kind of like Ren at the beginning of The Force Awakens, right? And John Boyega, of course, plays a stormtrooper in the newer Star Wars films. The first film, he's a stormtrooper. In the first film, Ren is like a scrap handler, who's sort of like running around trying to find valuable stuff to sell. And that's basically what John Boyega is doing at the beginning of this movie. It's interesting. He's very good in this. He's very good. At the very beginning of it, he meets another, younger kid, a girl who is, also sort of, just trying to make her way in the world, after these, huge tragic events of the first movie have taken place. And I do not know this actress's name, but she's great. She's really good. And not only is she a really good little actress, but she's a very well written, little character. Again, this is one of those movies like we see all the time nowadays, where it seems like there's always this need to have this strong female character, and I put that in quotes because it's so often handled badly. I don't have any problem with there being strong female characters in movies. I just hate it when I'm supposed to think this is a strong female character, and it just comes off as a completely unrealistic, stupid, lame character that I simply don't believe. In this case, it's anything but that. In this case, she's really good, very ultimately incredibly endearing, little character. I'm going to say her name wrong. I'm going to say her name is Mara. Her first name and her last name both have tons of A's in it, but it's like Mara Namaya or something like that. Sorry, guys. But she's fantastic. And again, I think it's a credit to the writers, and I think it's a credit to the actress. Very well done. Very cool little character. Charlie Day plays a cool character in this movie. Connections to the first film. There's, it's not really, it's not a cast full of big stars or anything like that. It's kind of refreshing in a way not to just see a bunch of people that you're expecting, or see a bunch of people that you're like, oh, that's like typical casting of that person. But it's very well cast. And, basically at the beginning of this, Boyega and this young girl get into trouble with the law. And basically the best option for them is to go back to the fleet, essentially, and for Boyega to go back and become an instructor, and for this young girl to put some of her know-how to use. She's really good with electronics. She's really good at building things, and she's a pretty damn good little robot pilot. So Jaeger pilot, excuse me. So so that she becomes a cadet, and Boyega, rejoins the forces and puts his uniform back on. Now, there's not a whole lot more I want to talk about because I don't want to give away a whole lot of the movie. Of course, there's going to be big fights with monsters and robots. And the way they get around to that in this movie is pretty good. That's one of the things you have to be scared about with a sequel like this is, okay, well, we saw the first movie, we understood the first plot. How are they going to find a way to, to have another big fight with these monsters again, that doesn't feel just like a rehashing of the first one? And they do a really good job with it. They do. At some points, this movie almost feels like it almost feels like it's just an extension of the first movie to some degree. And frankly, to some degree, if you have an opportunity to see the first movie before you see this one, I think it's recommended because there's a lot of weird detail and stuff in this movie that I think you might be a little bit lost, a little bit confused, if you see the second movie without seeing the first film. The first movie is available online. I don't think it's available for free. I've looked around a little bit recently just to see. That's something I like to be able to recommend to people if it's available. But it's not on Netflix right now. It's not on Amazon Prime right now. But you can rent it to stream on Amazon for like $3. And I think Google Play, you can rent it for like $3 or something like that. So so you might want to consider checking out the first film if you haven't already seen it. And in this movie, they come up with a really cool way to tell another story in this universe. Now, speaking of universes, let's talk a little bit about the movie behind the movie because there's no spoilers there. In the first film, again, I think you have a Guillermo del Toro movie, where you've got this sort of like reverence for these classic kaiju films. You've got a bit of a sort of a spooky overtone to things. You've got a real heavy sci-fi feeling about the whole thing. In this movie, you'd be in terrible danger again that this would turn into just a big monsters and big robots Transformers type film. But that's not what happens, and I think one of the big reasons is because of a guy named Stephen DeKnight. I think I'm saying that right. And Stephen DeKnight is somebody you might be familiar with more from television projects, specifically a little television project called Daredevil, which is on Netflix. Marvel's Daredevil on Netflix. If you guys have seen the first season of Daredevil, DeKnight was the showrunner on the first season of Daredevil, and the first season of Daredevil is fucking fantastic. And what is the first season of Daredevil like? Well, it is action fucking packed. It is story driven, but it's never really bogged down with plot. You know what I mean? There's a story, there's characters, there's conflicts, there's drama, there's, a few twists and turns, interesting things happening, but really it's just cranking forward, and every now and then there's a fucking fight in a hallway or something like that. Really, really great first season of that story. Second season, okay, not as good. Looking forward to the third season. But Stephen DeKnight takes a lot of credit for that first season of Daredevil, and if you're a fan of the first season of Daredevil, I think you will find a similar tone in this film. It's got a smart story, but it's a lean story. The very beginning of it is the perfect example of this. At the very beginning of the film, they basically give you about, I'm telling you, it's like 4 sentences of exposition to just fill you in on the entire first movie, and then they're off and running in an action sequence. And that pretty much sets the tone for the film. When a movie starts that way, I'm often waiting for the next shoe to drop because I'm wondering if I just saw the best part of the movie. And if you know, it's just going to be downhill after this. But that's not the case here. It's very much like just sets off on this pace, and it pretty much keeps that pace through the film. And that's very much how the Daredevil movie is. You've got like an action series, in this case an action movie, but it's an action movie with a good solid story, and also one that has this sort of backdrop that lends itself to all of this sort of like deep human sort of nuance, right? In the Daredevil universe, you've got you know, the story behind you know, the Daredevil being a blind kid. You've got the tragedy of his father. You've got the tragedy of Hell's Kitchen in general. You have this whole backdrop of pain and violence and dreams deferred and loss and mourning and grief and all these things going on in the background of Daredevil. And it allows the actual characters in the story to not have to be so complex that they get in the way of a great comic book action movie. But it keeps the whole thing from being only that. You know, it gives us a lot of flavor, man, a lot of deep flavor that you don't normally get in those situations. And again, I haven't talked this much in a while. It's hard on my throat. So again, in this film, you have a you have a story that could have been really paper thin, you know, just like monsters, giant robot piloted things smashing together, and then another scene of that, and building knocked over again, and all that stuff. But you don't have that, because in this movie, similar to Daredevil, you have this whole backdrop. You have the backdrop from the first movie. What happened in the first movie? Huge destruction, loss, you know, a lot of grief in this movie. It's almost like everybody in this movie has, in their own way, which is cool too. You get a lot of different points of view on this, but it's like everybody has like PTSD, basically. Everybody's a little bit fucked up because they went through this fucking insane shit that happened in the first movie. And this is really good because, you know, all too often in superhero films or in, you know, sci-fi movies, monster films, things like this, there's never a realistic accounting for the events that are taking place. It's just like, oh, a huge monster knocked over the building and we all ran, and then that's kind of it, you know? Where in this, it's like, no, that shit happened and I still can't sleep, literally, or I'm still, you know, you know, incapable of letting go of these things that are in my head that I don't want to think about anymore, but every time I close my eyes, they're there. You know, so there's this real, like, sort of dark price to be paid from the first movie that grounds this movie and doesn't let it turn into just a silly, you know, sci-fi action movie with monsters and robots. It's much better than that. And it's not a super deep movie. I didn't cry or anything like that, but you feel it, and you feel like it's a real place with real people in it, and therefore when the silly robot shit's going on, you're invested in it in a way you wouldn't be if that's all that was going on. So all in all, as somebody who can, you know, barely get through this thing with my cough, all in all, this is a very good movie. This is again one of my instant reviews. I just left the theater. I'm sitting here. I got some lovely light here, by the way. I should do all of these at night, but a lot of times these previews are still while it's during the day. Can you guys hear this? This guy's alarm's going off. I wish you could see the lights blanking on and off, but it's not twinkling in my eyes the way I would have it twinkle. But it's a very good movie. I'm actually pleasantly surprised by it. I think it's you know, it's one of those things where a lot of us complain, and I do all the time. I think it's silly that Hollywood just seems dead set on just remaking stuff or, you know, making sequels on things all the time. But, you know, every now and then, you know, there's, you know, a sequel can justify itself. You know, I don't know that we ever have to have sequels of films, but when you have a sequel that works and that makes sense and that seems to stand on its own 2 feet while at the same time adding to the legacy of the franchise, then by all means make another sequel. And this movie, if you stick around after the credits, not even after the credits, but there's sort of like a false end to the film. So stick around a little bit because you want to see the coda that sort of alludes to what might be coming up in a third film. And I will look forward to that third film because Pacific Rim 2 is pretty damn good. So I don't have a rating system of any kind. I need to come up with like my own unique rating system. I'm doing like thumbs up, and like you could do thumbs up or thumbs down. That seems a bit you know, I guess it's pretty good. That's the old Roger Siskel and Ebert thing. That's like something they got from Rome, probably, right? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I like that because basically what they were telling you is, should I spend my money on this or should I not spend my money on this? I would say spend your money on it. I would say spend your money because it is the kind of movie that does really read well on a big screen in a big theater with big sounds. You can watch it at home on your television once it gets to Netflix, and it'll still be fun. But it's the first day of spring, man. It's almost summertime, and to go see a big, loud, crazy science fiction movie at the theater this weekend, I think you'll enjoy it, and I think you'll find it's worth the money. If you go to a matinee, you'll be even more happy. So I recommend Pacific Rim 2. And I think, and it's called, what's it called? The Uprising or something like that? I should know the subtitle. Pacific Rim 2 Uprising. There's an uprising in there somewhere. But it's definitely good. Again, I don't have my rating system of my own yet. If you guys enjoy this review, why don't you leave me a comment? I've gotten lots of comments from you guys recently on my Black Panther review. I also put up a review for A Wrinkle in Time. If you guys missed that, that's up here on my YouTube channel. It's also on my Steam It page. So whether you're watching this on YouTube or on DTube, yeah, or just on my Steam It page, reply and leave me a comment and let me know if you think of a unique way for me to grade movies. I know on Cinema at the Cinema, right, with Tim Heidecker and Greg Turkington, they do like bags of popcorn. They do everything though. They end up with all sorts of stuff. So I don't know how many bags of popcorn I would give this. But say on a scale of 1 to 10, I would definitely give this a very solid 8 for sure. It's definitely like a B, you know what I mean? If you're a kid and this is the grade you got on a test, you'd be doing great. Your mom and dad are taking you to dinner. Everything's fine. So it's definitely a good movie. It exceeded my expectations, and I recommend it. And so I've got some other movies coming up soon, some other previews I'm going to be hitting in the next couple weeks. I don't think I have another one this week, but I think there's 2 next week, including Isle of Dogs. So that's coming up soon. So I'll be doing more of these, and I will be looking forward to your comments. Let me know how I should be grading these movies, if you have a cool idea for a scale in mind. And let me know what you thought of the review, and let me know if you have any questions about the movie. No spoilers, but you can ask anything you'd like, and if I think it's going to spoil the film, I'll find a way to talk around it. I'm always happy to answer comments. I'm always happy to get those comments. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button so you know every time I do one of these crazy first impressions reviews. I really enjoy doing these because I write about film for a few publications. And, sitting down and doing these immediately right after I get out of the movie, in some ways it really helps me think through it. So, having an audience who's interested in seeing these videos is, definitely helpful for me too. So it's all one big happy family here on my YouTube channel, isn't it? You can really feel the love. Anyway, so I am going to turn my heat back on, and I'm going to defog these windows, and I'm going to try to drive home before all of this sleet turns to ice on the road, it actually seems like the freezing rain has abated. So I think I'm going to be okay. So look forward to the next review. I will look forward to your comments, and I will see you guys next time. Have a good evening.